The O Cannabis Conference and Expo returns to Toronto June 1st through the 3rd, and there's still some good booth locations available. This exciting event is free for cannabis retailers and will feature Tommy Chong receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the O Cannabis Industry Awards. For more information about exhibiting or to register to attend, go to ocannabis.com. That's OCANNABIZ.com.
Today, we're going to take a look at sales of cannabis across North America. Got about 15 or so different states and provinces in Canada. So, we're going to take a look and see exactly what that means for the industry in the first 2 months of the year, overlapping that for 2020 to see exactly what the sales are, where they're going, and what that means for the industry. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. All right, Headsets North American sales update. Taking a look at California being a monster. So again, the first 2 months of the year, and then the rest of that is from last year. California, $411 million in sales for the month of February. Pretty ridiculous after 394 million last year. So we're about to hit a $500 million in annual sales, probably at the beginning of 2022 for California. Just absolutely ridiculous. So starting off this year, 2021, pretty strong by comparison. It's a lot higher than it was this time last year. We'll take a look at what year over year sales are, but total sales crushing it for Cali. Colorado doing pretty well, stable, 155.6 million. Just a little bit of a dip from last month at 158 million. Nevada, they're about the same, still kind of low for what they're doing. Obviously, they have no tourism or low tourism still. Not as many flights, at least half as much as the pre-pandemic in terms of daily flights. And then Nevada's been pretty hard hit. Washington, I've said is an interesting petri dish experiment, a terrible state to be in, except during a pandemic. So this is one of the most stable markets. You just look at it; it is a shelf. It is literally just flat, unchanged, no tourism. If anything, an increase as we continue to have over $100 million since March of last year. So 124 million for February for Washington. Not bad. All right, looking at the rest of the total sales, looks like Alberta, again, relatively flat. British Columbia as well. Illinois still kicking it with $121 million in sales, up from 115 million last month. Massachusetts, relatively flat, as is Oregon. Michigan, still on pace at 104% or 104 million. That should be a million. And then Ontario and Saskatchewan also flat. So Saskatchewan, as we've mentioned before in the past, not great numbers at 15 million, but a really good indicator for what the Dakotas or somewhere in the Midwest might do. A Wyoming, for example. So take a look at Saskatchewan for future sales for small rural America. All right, next up is the year over year sales growth. So 43% in California for the growth. That's about not half, but it's considerably less than last year. So March of last year, we had 74% growth. That's because of the new market, right? So kind of starting to see this level out fairly early, actually, but still a good sign. Last month, it was up 33% for year over year sales, probably because of a Christmas bounce. Either that's because people didn't have the money from Christmas presents, and or they were already stocked up from Green Friday in November and or Christmas sales in December. Same pattern as we move along. Colorado at 39% year over year sales. That's up from 36 last month. Nevada 19%. That's good sign because they had 12% last month. Washington 28% year over year sales growth compared to 20% last month. Canadian sales growth is a little bit mixed. You see Alberta at 71%, relatively flat, but British Columbia saw an increase of 127%. Maybe they've got more stores. I'm not sure why that popped as much as it did. Ontario, 161%, still going strong out there. Probably a lot of that is being pulled by Toronto, and then Saskatchewan, 96%, up from 77 last month. Not too bad. By comparison, looking at Illinois, 343% increase. So definitely loving their cannabis. We'll see next up that they're spending $110 per visit. Not quite twice what California is, but they're definitely spending their money out there trying a whole lot of stuff. Massachusetts, on the other hand, 63%. So that market is either leveling out really fast. By comparison, they were at 195% last year in March. So looking like things might be leveling out there, looking more normal, like a state like Oregon with 41% year over year sales growth. So average basket size is interesting, kind of tells us how much money people are spending on average. In California happens to be $65 because delivery is a $65 minimum. So you're actually seeing a decrease actually on average, bringing that down because it's actually bumped up to the minimum. Not too bad. Colorado, on the other hand, $60, same as last month. 65 for Nevada and 34 for Washington. So Washington's an interesting example. Again, we're like Oregon. We've been around for a while, same as Colorado, but Colorado has more tourism, which is why it's almost twice the price on average of Washington. We don't have the tourism here. This is just the average consumer buying what they want when they want, not necessarily bulking or hoarding up on things. And that's probably the difference. I'm, of course, speculating and inferring on the data, but that's just based on what I see. Alberta, again, relatively flat. I'm not sure if that's just them maturing relatively quickly. British Columbia's average basket is flat as well, both of those at around 45, 46, respectively. The other Canadian provinces, Ontario, 53, Saskatchewan, 47. So not too shabby. Like I mentioned, Illinois is at $110. They're definitely the highest out there. Massachusetts, also relatively new, $91 on average for people spending, which is the opposite thing of Oregon, $40 on average because they just go out and buy what they want when they want. Not really worried about it. So basket count, that's the total number of transactions in millions. So basket count for California, they had 6.2 million transactions. Colorado had 2.5 million, 1 million for Nevada, and 3.5 million for Washington. Looking at Canada's total number of transactions or basket count, looks like Alberta had 1.2 million transactions, followed by 800,000 British Columbia. Ontario had 1.3 million, Saskatchewan only 300,000 transactions. Again, not that much. Looking at Illinois, they had 1 million transactions, still bringing in a ton of money for not too many transactions. 900,000 for Massachusetts and 2.4 million for Oregon. So um, transactions, that's just because the people in Massachusetts are probably going half as much. They're going and spending a lot more. You can see that in Illinois. 1 million transactions, they're not going as often, but they're buying a lot more. Oregon, Washington, 3.5 million for Washington, 2.4 million for Oregon. They go more often, spending a lot less, $30 and $40. So I think that's probably the reason people don't want to stand in those huge lines in those newly regulated marketplaces, and I don't blame them. Brand concentration is interesting because it kind of lets you know how competitive a marketplace is. Vertically integrated opportunities like in Colorado are better. Washington doesn't have that opportunity. So brand concentration in Washington is a lot lower, but we also have the most brands than any other market. So our concentration is really, really low at 23%. California, relatively new, 26%, though, still a lot of brands out there that haven't, failed yet. Colorado, they have vertical integration, so 29%. Nevada, 34% brand concentration. All right, two neighbors up north, Alberta, 40% brand concentration. And then that's all the information I have for Canada. So the only other brand concentration I have is for Oregon, also comparable to Washington at 24%. Still really, really low. Not bad. So the market looks like it's doing really well. It's kind of rebounding from last year, which I don't really understand because I would have thought that people would be a lot more broke this year than last year, but maybe they're just buying less groceries, less toilet paper, and more cannabis as it's become essential as lockdowns continue, work from home continues, and all of that. So definitely count on cannabis being essential business and demand continuing to increase as even more states come on board. We're seeing obviously New York and Virginia, maybe South Dakota is going to have to vote for it again, just like how Montana's judge kicked them out a while back with medical. We're seeing the same thing with recreation in South Dakota, and judges basically nullifying the people's vote. So I don't know. You have to come back to the Talking Hedge and find out what happens. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Hi, y'all. I'm Joe, host of Casually Baked, the podcast. If you're curious to explore the highly responsible side of cannabis, farming, and legalization, I'm here to help lighten the stigma and build your canna confidence. Download episodes now of Casually Baked, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And journey with me through the evolving cannabis culture and discover how and why people like you are adding cannabis to their wellness toolkit. It's time to get casually baked.